Boy, the tenor of this conversation is going to be so different than what I thought it was going to be with 4 minutes left in the game today. It went from because as they were driving down, here's exactly what happened. When they were driving with under 5 minutes to go, they have a 1st and 10. It's Jordan Mason for 9 yards. 2nd and 1. Jordan Mason for 4 yards. First down, the Niners at the Rams, I think 36 at that point. And I said to the people I'm doing post at 95.7 in San Francisco, not to brag, I don't like to talk about it that much. So happy that bit's back. I was like, oh, this game's over. Because how many times have we seen the Niners just bludgeon a team at the end of a game? It's like, oh, they're going to score a touchdown here with about 1:10 left, and it's just going to be ball game. And then Isaac Guerrero goes around the left side for 5 yards. Oh, holding on Kyle Juszczyk, move it back. Now they're in 1st and 20, and that's where the ball kind of started rolling, and the wheels started to come off. But that was the worst loss of the Kyle Shanahan era for me.
The worst regular season loss?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm of a few minds about this, right? I was in SoFi Stadium this afternoon as a civilian, as a patron, as a non-media member for the first time at crazy. An NFL game in a very, very long time. And the atmosphere was very unique. I had sort of not given the atmosphere a whole lot of credence, like as a media member in the press box, because you're sort of limited in terms of what you can hear. But being in the stands, hearing the noises, it was 70-30 Niners fans.
It's insane.
Like all of the, like the street vendors who were selling like T-shirts and stuff, like walking into and out of the stadium, way more Niners gear getting sold. Like by street vendors at a Rams home game in LA.
That's so wild.
So that is kind of wild. But to me, the Niners simply aren't playing championship football right now. Like that, it's not even close. And I think there are plenty of things to be concerned about. And what I'm trying to decide is, do I look at this the same way as I look at, when they were, I think they were 3-5 in 2022, right? Or maybe that was 2021, and they were 3-4 in 2022, right? And the first month and a half of the season just felt super uneven because they were finding ways to lose these very winnable games, despite everybody knowing what type of talent they had. But this one, I think, is particularly troubling because of what happened on special teams. Because you're coming off a week where you lose in Minnesota largely because you give up a fake punt that leads to points the other way. In this game, there is no more obvious scenario for a potential fake punt try than in, I believe it was the first quarter, maybe early in the second. First opportunity for a fake punt, like you're at midfield, it's set, you have 7 yards to go. And Kyle Shanahan even said, we were kind of expecting a fake punt there. And the 49ers defense still couldn't get off the field, or their special teams unit couldn't get off the field. You have Jake Moody miss a 55-yard field goal, which isn't crazy because people miss 55-yard field goals all the time. But when you don't have so many of your weapons and your special teams already isn't playing that well, and you're going against Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, you just have to win on the margins in these cases, right? You don't have Kyle Juszczyk, you don't have Christian McCaffrey, you don't have George Kittle. You can't make these types of mistakes. Sorry, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. Did I say?
Okay. Yes, I thought I missed something. Sorry.
No. Sorry, I might have misspoke. But like, you have to win these games on the margins when you don't have your guys. You have to play a clean game. And Brock Purdy, save for the fumble at the end of the first half, played a super clean game. Juwan Jennings played awesome. A completely ridiculous game, right? But you have to be devoid of all these mistakes. You can't have Ronnie Bell dropping a pass on a 2nd and 10 that you catch that, it's basically curtains. It's basically ball game, right? And so is it a team-wide like failure? Yes. Is it fixable? Yes. Like, it doesn't feel like there's, a talent like there's an issue with the talent that they have on the roster, at least to win this game against a Rams team that's super banged up, that's probably not all that good in the long run. It's like, and it's a divisional game, and it's against Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. Like I get that, right? But you just cannot be making these mistakes. And I'm curious as to what Kyle Shanahan's tolerance is going to be for these special teams mistakes. Like, is Brian Schneider going to have a job next week?
Well,
right.
It's one of, he would like to not think about it, and now special teams has hosed them in consecutive weeks.
And maybe that's an issue Kyle Shanahan has. He's like, Kyle Shanahan cares so much about offense and defense, and he's like, I don't want special teams to screw it up. But he doesn't really think all that much about special teams, right? Like John Harbaugh, Ravens coach, special teams guy. And the Ravens are always going to be a super good special teams team. Special teams unit. But yeah, like, that some coaches really value special teams and look at it like, we have to be excellent in this phase because it can be the difference in winning and losing. And Kyle Shanahan is like, the way he talks about it is like, I just don't want it to be an issue. I don't really care about it. I just don't want it to lose us games. It's losing you games. And like, I think you can make a fair argument that aside from all the injuries and all the other stuff, special teams is probably the most correctable and the most glaring issue that they're dealing with right now. And you have 3 plays, in my opinion. You have the fake punt that you allow. And this is a week after allowing the block punt against the Vikings. You have the fake punt that leads to a first down and touchdown. You have the missed field goal, which is like not egregious because guys miss 55-yard field goals, right? Sure. You have a 50 or a 38-yard punt return that you allow on the last drive of the game. There's absolutely zero reason for that to happen. Like, there is no scenario in which you can consider yourself a winning football team and have that type of mistake in that moment. And so, we could talk about the offense. We can talk about Isaac Yiadom being picked on over and over again and all the penalties, which were super problematic. We can talk about the injuries and all that. But to me, like, the special team stuff it has to get addressed in a meaningful way at some point. And like, we talked about in the offseason, like in the draft and free agency, how many guys did they add that they were like, oh yeah, we love what he could be on special teams?
So many.
They added a bunch of free agents and guys in the draft. They were like, yeah, this guy's going to contribute on special teams. We're really trying to upgrade because we feel like that's an important area. Special teams has failed them in a big way the last 2 weeks, and that's, to me, the biggest reason why they're 1-2.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And that's why this loss sucks so bad, is because it's like we can sit here, we could do an hour on the special team stuff, right? But
people would love that. They would eat it up.
Just be so dialed. No, it's just it was a huge issue today, obviously, but it was one of so many. And that's why this went from, oh man, the Niners are going to cruise. If the Niners, the way that game started, 14-0 in the first quarter, I think the Niners had the ball for like 12 and a half minutes in the first quarter. Just dominated time of possession. They were cruising offensively. Defensively, they look great. And it was like, oh man, they're not only going to steal a win with Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey out, they're going to kick the hell out of the Rams. And we're going to be having a really interesting conversation about Brock Purdy and Juwan Jennings and all that. And instead, there's really interesting conversations to have, not just about the special teams, but, I mean, is Leonard Floyd playing? And when he is, why is he dropping into coverage so often? Just a fascinating wrinkle. Isaac Yiadom is who you just mentioned isn't good. He hasn't been good at all, and it's like he's played a lot of special teams in his career, so like maybe you can fix 2 problems at once by moving him into that role. I thought Nick Bosa was pretty good today for the most part, but Devondre Campbell is not a starting NFL player anymore, man.
No.
He's not. He's not. And that of all things, and I mentioned him last because that's the thing I want to get to. The pass rush has not been good. There's been some mistakes in the secondary for sure, but I feel like the thing that's missing from the 49ers is that explosiveness in the second level. Like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw running around hitting people just set such a tone. And their ability to take away easy throws. Matthew Stafford was fine today. He wasn't great. He had less than 7 yards per attempt. But it looked like he was cooking because he was just getting back and it was just like dump off to Colby Parkinson to Parkinson. There's something over the middle to Tyler Johnson. There's an easy little screen to Jordan Whittington. These are real names. And then, Isaac Yadam can't cover Tutu Atwell, so he gets him for a 46-yard pass interference penalty. And then here's Tutu Atwell cooking Travarius Ward. Sorry, I got on a tangent there. Matthew Stafford. The reason Matthew Stafford was so good today was because those throws, those easy check down throws that the Niners usually are very good at taking away or at least limiting the yak on, were just there and available, wide open all game. And that, to me, comes back to the play in the second level. I always lauded how much Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw mattered to the Niners defense. And I think removing Dre Greenlaw and putting in a player who is old and slow and out of his depth in that position is killing the 49ers defensively right now.
Yeah, I don't think we have talked about Dre Greenlaw's absence enough or factored it in. Devondre Campbell is not. And like we went to training camp and we came out of it being like, man, it doesn't feel like Devondre Campbell should just be awarded this starting job like Nick Sorensen was.
Yeah.
Like Nick Sorensen talked like 2 weeks into training camp, like, yeah, Devondre Campbell's our guy. And it's like, you sure? Like, is that really the smartest thing that you should? And now that's sort of coming to roost. And it's like, we don't know what we don't know what the time frame is for Dre Greenlaw, but they can't get him back fast enough. And we don't know what he's going to look like. And like an Achilles tear can, that can be really tough to come back
sap from. A player entirely.
Yeah, and Yadam, like, what it felt like Matt Stafford was picking on Yadam for the majority of that game on purpose, right? Like it was picking on Yadam. And when you have a really good quarterback who can place the ball where he wants to, and he's comfortable and the pass rush isn't getting there, if you have a weakness in the secondary, then it's going to get exploited. Or if you have a weakness at linebacker, it's going to get exploited.
Yep.
So D. Winters came into the game for a little while. He left with an ankle injury. I know he's been dealing with the injury. I wonder if D. Winters were healthy, would he be playing next to Fred Warner, not Devondre Campbell?
I think it's something you have to consider if they're not already.
Yeah, I think it might be the ankle issue. So, yeah, and just the drops I think were maddening, right? And you can talk about like the injuries and like, it's going to be tough to win a divisional game on the road without three of your best offensive players. I don't think that applies here.
Dude, their offense was not the problem today.
Brock Purdy was excellent today.
Yeah.
Like excellent. Like he didn't have really I mean, he might have had one bad throw where it was like somebody he wasn't even throwing the ball away. He was running at the right time. A couple of his runs were super clutch and he was getting first downs. He had 40 something rushing yards, I think, on 10 carries. Like, and some of those were sneaks, obviously, but like Purdy was excellent.
Yeah.
And Juwan Jennings was excellent in large part because Purdy was getting him to the ball to the right spot. But if Ronnie Bell makes that catch on 2nd and 10 late in the fourth quarter, we're talking about Purdy in a different way than, like you and I talked last week after the Vikings game. Like, all right, it's time for Purdy to elevate his game because he needs to. You have less margin for error when the talent around you isn't nearly as good. Right? You have to be more accurate when your receivers aren't as good. You have to be more aware in the pocket when your pass protection isn't as good. And I thought Purdy, for the most part, was. I think you can being there and obviously not knowing his reads, but like we had a pretty good view. We were in the 300 level at SoFi, and like you can sort of see, you have a good view of like the all 22.
Yeah.
There were a couple plays where it was like it looked like he missed a couple guys deep, and I think Brandon Ayuk on that 1 3rd down where he was scrambling around forever. I think it was right before the 55-yard field goal attempt. It looked like he had Brandon Ayuk deep, and you heard it in the stadium.
Yes.
You heard it in the stadium, like Niners fans were like, "Oh, he's open. That's a touchdown." And then he ended up scrambling around and but other than that, like I have a very hard time. I just wanted to point out, I think we're having a different discussion about Purdy had Ronnie Bell made that catch. And that's really like Ronnie Bell's not on the team if Ricky Pearsall is healthy.
Yeah,
right?
No. What does he do? No, I'm dead serious.
Yeah,
like he's obviously not a dynamo on special teams, given their mistakes there. So, I'm not doing a bit. I would rather Terrace Marshall be running those routes than Ronnie Bell.
You would definitely rather have Jacob Cowing.
Yeah, right? Like what this is. I want to stick on Ronnie Bell. I actually want to get back to what you were talking about with Brock Purdy for a second, and then we can talk about Ronnie Bell, and then we can talk about Kyle Shanahan. I kind of wonder with the Purdy running stuff and the scrambling stuff, you mentioned that play to Ayuk. Ayuk had 2 drops today. I kind of wonder if the reason he didn't uncork that throw to Ayuk is just because he doesn't trust him to catch it. Or he doesn't feel like they've built that chemistry where he feels comfortable enough letting that ball rip. I think that's why he scrambled around quite a bit today. It's the same issue I think he had in Minnesota. I just think he doesn't feel great about throwing it to some of these guys. And lo and behold, he throws an absolute fucking dot to Ronnie Bell on that 2nd and 20. Or was 2nd and 10. I'm conflating the 2 drives. Second and 10. Yeah, I had 2 drives mixed up. But on the 2nd and 10, throws a dime that's going to put him in easy field goal range, and that's going to be the ball game. And he just drops it. I mean, you said we'd have a different conversation about Brock Purdy. Like, yeah, because they would have won, and we would have been like, oh my God, Brock was sick today.
He would have had over 10 yards per attempt.
Yeah, he was awesome regardless. Like,
great.
So that was, so yeah, man, I think the Purdy running stuff has something to do with the fact that he's like, I'm not throwing into any of these dudes. As far as Ronnie Bell goes, yeah, I don't think he's probably on the team for much longer because I genuinely, like, I don't know what he does for them. And this is one of my, I think I need to say this up front. I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. I think the 49ers should keep him as their head coach because they win a lot of football games. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I also think he's imperfect. And one of the ways I think he's imperfect is you see Sean McVay, and we see other coaches do. Andy Reid does this too, where it's like, all right, Jordan Whittington's what I've got to work with today. Here we go. Jordan Whittington, you're going to be the man. Tyler Johnson, get in there. You're going to have a couple catches. Demarcus Robinson, you're going to get like 6 targets. Here we go. We're just going to get these guys out there, and we're going to let them run around, and we're going to let them play football. Whereas with Kyle Shanahan, the reason it's Ronnie Bell and not Jacob Cowing is because he knows that he believes that Ronnie Bell is going to run the route more correctly than Jacob Cowing is. But there is no way that you're going to convince me that Ronnie Bell is a more talented player than Jacob Cowing. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to buy it. And if you think that having Ronnie Bell out there because, oh, he can block and there's a threat that he's going to block, so watch out, they might run it. Like, dude, throw that shit out the fucking window at that point. I get why that matters in the second quarter and you're trying to, set plays up. But, like, dude, you need it. That's a need it, gotta have it situation. I don't need the Rams to go, oh, number 10's out there. Oh, they might run it because he's a little bit of a better blocker than Jacob Cowing. Like, that's insane. Like, that's ridiculous. If I don't care that Jacob Cowing doesn't know the playbook, be like, hey, number 19, go line up over there, off the line, run straight. That you don't even need to know the playbook to do that. So that's one of the things I think that Kyle Shanahan is not great at, is integrating some players who might be better than other players because he quote unquote trusts those other players more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was sitting there and the people I was with, I was kind of like calling out running plays based on which receivers were in the game, because there were a few scenarios where it was like, oh, Ronnie Bell's in the game and Chris Conley's in the game, and those are the two receivers. And then it was like, okay, this is gonna be a running play, and lo and behold, it was, right. Like they really only threw the ball when Juwan Jennings was on the field. And if I can pick up that tendency in the crowd, like the coaching staff can, the Rams coaching staff can. So, and that's a depth issue, right? That's like, you don't have, what do we talk about with the 49ers all the time? It's the multiplicity of what you can do with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in the lineup, right?
Exactly.
But when you don't, when Brandon Ayuk, who's not fully in football shape yet, is on the sideline and not playing as many snaps as he normally would, and Juwan Jennings needs a blow because he's playing more snaps than he normally would, and you have Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell on the field, you're going to run it. The Rams knew that. But to the point, like, yeah, Jacob Cowing absolutely has to be on the field over Ronnie Bell. There's no doubt about that. That was clear in the preseason. I know Ronnie Bell had a nice camp at the practice you and I went to. Ronnie Bell had a really nice practice. But at a certain point, like, you got to remember, the only reason Ronnie Bell made the 53-man roster is because Ricky Pearsall's unavailable. Right? That's the only reason. Like, he wasn't going to make it over Jacob Cowing. They would have much rather cut a guy who was a 7th-round pick 2 years ago over a guy they just drafted in the 4th round. And Cowing proved that he could be a gadget-type player, and the 49ers didn't really have any gadget-type plays in their offense today, and I thought they could have used it. And maybe that's a product of all the offensive penalties they had and all the long situations where it's like, you're not going to dial up, a gadget play on 1st and 20 necessarily, right? Like, those are scenarios where you're in more favorable down and distances. But I just think, like, ultimately you just need to get Deebo Samuel back, and you need to get Brandon Ayuk, like, up to speed, because it still doesn't feel like he's that guy just yet. But offensively, like, I thought when the Niners got down to deep in the Rams territory and they had 2nd and 3rd and 1, they have to get that first down. When they did the back-to-back running plays to JP Mason, they just have to get that first down. And then Kyle Shanahan kicks the field goal. And I didn't really have a problem with Kyle Shanahan kicking the field goal there. I had a bigger problem with just running it back-to-back times, because it felt like the Rams were in a position to sell out against the run. And you need to get in the end zone there. And I just don't love the play call. Like, I would have much preferred play action. Juwan Jennings was such a hot hand at that point. Like, give him a 50-50 ball. Like, I would feel better. It feels like a 1-yard run for Jordan Mason in that scenario, that down and distance, feels like a 50-50 scenario, just the same as a toss, like a fade route to Juwan Jennings would be. And I'm not saying run a fade. I'm just saying throw it in the end zone, because a touchdown there does a lot more than a field goal. I know it's a 2-score game, but it's 4 more points.
Yeah, there's so many more. I don't hate the field goal decision there, because it's going up 2 scores. That's fine. And if it was 4th and 1,
it was a play calling for me.
Yeah, they just the first touchdown to Jennings, when it was the fake toss and then the linebackers come up, safety flies down, there's Jennings wide open. There's nothing else like that in your bag. Like, I know they've got something more creative than whatever they did.
Yeah.
It just, yeah.
And also, Trent Williams just has to be better. Like, let's call it, like,
facts, dude.
Here's the thing. Fred Warner said, I think it was early last year, maybe the year before that, the A guys need to play like A guys. Trent Williams, paid like an A guy, has not been an A guy just yet. Brandon Ayuk, paid like an A guy, has not been an A guy. George Kittle unavailable, Deebo Samuel unavailable, Christian McCaffrey hasn't played all season. Like, Fred Warner, as good as Fred Warner is and as amazing as he was in Minnesota, he wasn't that good today, because it felt like Sean McVay was kind of putting him on a top a little bit. Like, whatever Sean McVay was doing with Kyron Williams and their play calls, Fred Warner was not as aggressive today because it felt like a schematic thing with what the Rams were doing, because Fred Warner is usually really good at anticipating things, and he just wasn't. That wasn't happening today.
He was in the wrong spot a lot.
Yeah, and that's a credit to Sean McVay. Like, Sean McVay is a great coach. Like, we all know that. But the Niners A guys have not been A guys.
Nope. Save for Fred Warner last week.
Yeah, and Nick Bosa's been fine, but Nick Bosa isn't playing at a defensive player. Like, for the Niners to get to where they want to go, Nick Bosa has to be the defensive player of the year type player.
So that's
nowhere near that right now.
That's just it. It's not as easy as Nick Bosa didn't have any sacks. He was bad today. No, I thought Nick Bosa was really good. But at the same time, you have to get the quarterback on the ground. And it's not like TJ Watt gets doubled and chipped and all this other stuff. He gets plenty of attention. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, all those guys get all that attention the same way. And it feels like every time I watch one of those guys, they come up with a sack in a huge spot.
Well, and what do we know about Matt Stafford, right? Like, you hit Matt Stafford, you can rattle him a little bit because he's played so long. He's dealt with so many injuries. If you hit him, you can prevent him from getting comfortable.
Yep.
And he was extremely comfortable. And when he's comfortable, he can pick on Isaac Yiadom and he can pick on Devondre Campbell. But if you hit him, you can take a little bit of that away. And the 49ers weren't able to do that with Bosa or anybody else. So like, the special team stuff, to me, issue 1A, like, you got to fix that. And the next issue is your best players have to start playing like your best players. And they just haven't yet. And I think that'll come. Like, I just trust the talent, and I trust the fact that, like, we've seen them get off to bad starts to seasons before.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is, you do not want to be in November and December and playing must-win games just to get into the playoffs, or have must-win games to keep your chances at winning the division alive, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the team that wants to get to the Super Bowl, and it's the oldest roster in the NFL, and it needs that first-round bye. Yeah, so that's what's concerning to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they just weren't good today, man. Or they weren't good enough. I don't know. It's one of those things that I feel like we've harped on, like the Ronnie Bell drop or the fourth down, the fake field goal. But then there's the Kyle Juszczyk hold. There's the play calling on the 2nd and 1 where they just ran it twice. There are just all these things, because you go look at the box score and then the box score doesn't indicate that the 49ers should have lost that game. But you get the 46-yard penalty that allows the Rams to have like a 6-play, 24-yard drive with 46 of their 70 yards coming on penalties. And then you have the 50-yard completion to Tutu Atwell in a spot where you absolutely cannot have a 50-yard completion. They're this bend, don't break defense that's like, yeah, we'll give you whatever you want underneath, but you're not getting in behind us. And all of a sudden, in this one spot, the one spot where you can't let a receiver in behind you, it's just like, oh yeah, oops. Like, man, what? This is just not. Maybe this is where the Super Bowl hangover thing is manifesting. Maybe they're just not as dialed. Maybe they are doing the NFL equivalent of what like NBA teams do, where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to flip the switch in January. And that's when the real, like, okay, like maybe, but like you just said, when it comes to first round buys, you don't get to lose more than like 3 or 4 games. And they've dropped 2, one of them, both of them winnable, one maybe more so than the other. And it's just, it's becoming a thing where I kind of wonder if we are, I don't know. I don't want to overreact. I'm trying not to overreact.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
I was going to try and fire somebody, but I'm not going to try to fire anybody. It's only week 3.
I think,
except for Brian Schneider.
Yeah, I think Brian Schneider might be in serious trouble. I think that's the way Kyle Shanahan talked about or didn't talk about special teams in his post-game press conference indicated to me that he's not at all happy, nor should he be.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to decide is the window closing, and is this team going to be old and injured and not as good as it was before, because it's just these guys aren't the same guys anymore. They've played too many games, et cetera, et cetera. Or is this just like 21, 22 when, they were under 500 through September and into October? Like, that's where I'm leaning. Like, I think this is just pretty typical of the Niners. They have some bad games in September and October, and their record's bad, but then they'll reel off 10 in a row, in November and December. Maybe that happens when they get everybody back. But given the age of a lot of these guys, Trent Williams, 36, George Kittle's 30, Christian McCaffrey has a ton of miles on him as a running back and is dealing with a pretty scary tendonitis issue in his Achilles. Like, at some point you wonder, like, all right, maybe that's who they are now. And so it's up to their A guys to prove that, like, no, they're still a viable contender. And right now they're just not looking like it. But they don't have many of their guys. They're missing 3 of their best offensive players today, which is important to note, but it's also not an excuse because they have to win that game.
Yeah, man, that's it. That is a
Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp too. So it's like
the Rams are missing more dudes. The Niners have too many talented players. I really can't get over how ineffective Leonard Floyd has been, just because he's been so good in the NFL for so long. And now it's just a no-show 2 weeks in a row, where having another edge rusher would have been super helpful. But despite all that, they've got Patriots, Cardinals, Seahawks coming up, then Chiefs, Cowboys to finish out the first 8 weeks before the bye. There's a very real chance that they could be sitting going into the bye at like 5-3, and everything would be kind of in a better spot. And maybe at that point you have Christian McCaffrey coming back, huh?
Or 3-5.
Well, I was getting there. That's the glass half full, right? Oh man, you could be 5-3, and you got Christian McCaffrey coming back, and then, like you just said, their track record in the second half of years is very good. That you feel good about them going into a second half, especially when they're 5-3. But the flip side of that is they don't look like a team that can beat Arizona right now. They don't look like a team that can beat Seattle right now. They certainly don't look like a team that can beat Kansas City right now. They're going to go beat Dallas? It's just really hard to circle anything on the 49ers in 2024. You can go back to last year and go, oh, well, last year this guy was good and this guy was good. But right now, based on how they're playing, it is so hard to paint a picture where you feel really good about them beating anybody over the next couple of weeks.
I agree.
But
I agree.
I think they have the dudes. I think they have the personnel. It's just a matter of, when's the Brandon Ayuk breakout coming? Is Trent Williams ever going to look like Trent Williams again? When does Christian McCaffrey come back? I do think, while Sunday was generally bad, I do think Brock Purdy's performance was pretty encouraging. The fact that he did what he did today, without Christian McCaffrey, without Deebo Samuel, without Brandon Ayuk, Freudian slip, without Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, or George Kittle, that's really impressive, and that answered a lot of questions for me, because I did not think that he would be doing what he did, or I wasn't sure he could do what he did today without those guys on the field. So that's at least encouraging.
And if Juwan Jennings is like, oh, this guy's like 1,000-yard receiver now, that's pretty huge for them.
Yeah, you'd feel good about it. Yeah, man. Like, there's definitely a world where by week 8, Christian McCaffrey's back, and all of a sudden this team is cooking again. But I really think they're going to need to make some changes defensively. I'm not sure Isaac Yiadom is that dude. I definitely don't think Devondre Campbell's that dude. My guess is they wind up trading for another defensive end, just because they're just getting nothing out of that spot.
Yeah.
It's just, ugh.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that. I think that's all I have for tonight.
I need to rewatch.
I thought, honestly, the biggest play of the game, just off the top of my head right now, feels like the fake punt.
Yeah, so I was going through this with my buddy Tommy today. There was the fake punt. There was the Yadam pass interference, the 46-yard pass interference. There was the holding on Juszczyk on the missed field goal drive. There was a missed field goal. There was a 50-yard reception by Tutu Atwell. There was the Ronnie Bell drop, and then there was the blown punt coverage. And then they had a play where they had 3 penalties on one play on that last drive,
including a pass. And the big one was a pass interference on Devontae Campbell.
I mean, yeah,
and as Bryce is pointing out in the chat, and I think maybe a couple other people are too, Colton McKivitz hasn't been great.
Dude, on the fumble,
feels like he's been worse than he was last year. He was never like a great player, but he was pretty. I mean, he was serviceable.
If he went up against every player is treating him like TJ Watt did, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
like Byron Young's a fine player, but for him to get around McKivitz as easily and as quickly as he did on the fumble was embarrassing. And I know that you can only pay so many guys, and there's different ways that you can build a team, and this is Kyle Shanahan's philosophy: get the guys that you can get the ball to. That's great, totally. But then why isn't Jacob Cowing on the field? If you're going to forego offensive line because you're so confident that Colton freaking McKivitz is going to be an NFL starter and he's going to be good enough to give Brock Purdy time to get the ball to the guys who make the plays, okay, that's great. So you're going to draft a receiver in the 4th round and a running back in the 4th round, by the way, instead of an offensive lineman who might be able to compete for your starting right tackle job. But that running back gets 5 carries and the wide receiver can't get on the field. That doesn't make any sense to me, man.
Could Dominic Pooney play right tackle, do you think?
Maybe. Probably. I'm a little surprised they didn't give it a shot in camp.
Would you?
I wouldn't do it right now.
If why am I blanking on his name?
Jalen Moore, Spencer Burford, Ben Barch,
the veteran.
Chris Hubbard.
Nope, the guy who played right guard last year left the Super Bowl with an injury. Blanking on his name.
Spencer Burford, John Feliciano.
If John Feliciano comes back off IR, I think he can after next week. I don't know what his health situation is. Are you to the point where you would try Pooney at right tackle and play Feliciano at right guard?
No, because Pooney hasn't. I don't know that Pooney has played right tackle since like his freshman year of college.
Okay.
He might have played. Maybe I'm mixing them up with a different prospect, but yeah, I don't. That just feels like a lot. For a rookie.
That's drastic. I know it's drastic, but I do wonder if we get there at some point this season.
Now that's where if this is still bad and they're 3-5 going into their bye week, maybe that week off, you try and see if you can make that change there since you have the extra time. But
yeah,
I don't know,
because it does feel like as of now, Niners are probably more likely to draft a corner in the 1st round next year, a corner or an offensive lineman. But in terms of options at tackle, aside from McKivitz, Pooney to me feels like the best one.
Probably. Not really sure.
So anyway.
Yuck, man.
Offensive line play throughout the league is bad, I think.
Yeah. Bryce, I believe Mike McGlinchey is hurt.
And the Broncos smacked up the Bucs today on the road.
They put it on the Bucs, dude.
What? I only saw the score. What happened in that game?
I don't know. I only saw the score too.
It was
locked into
game.
Broncos Bucs. Are you kidding me?
You weren't? Wow. Okay.
Andy Dalton lighting up the Raiders was insane.
I had no idea what happened in that game either.
Andy Dalton lit up the Raiders. That's what happened.
Wild.
Yeah, for like 319 and 3 touchdowns, I think.
The NFL is completely wild. I would not want to be the Patriots next week.
Caleb Williams threw it 52 times. That's a thing that happened today. Oh, the Cowboys were down like 28-6 with like 8 minutes left and lost 28-25.
Wow.
They scored a touchdown, got an onside kick, scored a quick touchdown, kicked it away, forced a punt, and then I think scored again. Crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. Do want to say, had Candlestick Chronicles at our, wasn't quite a tailgate. It was just kind of hanging out in the parking lot of SoFi today.
That's tailgate.
The hype is real. Just want to throw that out there.
For people in Sacramento, in the greater Sacramento area, I don't know how far this radio station reaches, but KNCI's Tom Maley, big fan of Candlecron, dropped him some off the other day. Big fan.
Nice. Love that.
Shout
Delicious.
out to Tom.
Delicious. So yeah, that was probably the highlight of the day for me as a
dog.
Observer.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it was a great game. It was a fun game to be at. I know the Niners did not play as well as they should have, and the result was not what they were looking for. But great game, fun times. The map show.
Stop making excuses, dog.
Enough excuses. This team is supposed to get their revenge this year after losing last year in the Super Bowl in overtime. So far, they don't seem real ready to prove that they are the real champions. Yeah, but the good news is championships are not determined September 22nd.
Yeah, but they also look like ass. So no, man, it's just
that's all I got.
I don't know, man. I'll say this. Our live event at Cooperage Brewing is on Saturday, October 12th. If the 49ers are like 1-5 going into that show, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be lit.
It'll turn into an Ohio State-Oregon watch party.
Oh, hell yeah. OH, baby.
All right. Yes, come to our event at Cooperage. It's free at 8 p.m. October 12th. We will be hanging out. We'll do a live show. Hopefully we'll get some guests. And we'll do some fundraising, get some cool items to auction off and those types of things for a good cause. And we will have more details on that as they emerge. But yeah, Cooperage, Santa Rosa. It's off Piner Road, if you're familiar, west of 101 in Santa Rosa. Be sure to check it out. The beer is phenomenal. Go get yourself some Candlestick Chronicles. It is phenomenal. We'll see you guys there. Thank you for rocking with us. Subscribe, rate, and review. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please hit the like button, notification bell, all of those things. It means a lot. So we'll talk to you guys later on in the week as we get back up to Northern California.